Welcome to Two Mics. Today's special guest is Boni and Tito. We're hoping to give you value for your time. We're going to be discussing a variety of topics centered around marriage and commitment. We're hoping to give you value for your time. Karibuni sana. So something happened recently. We saw, what is this guy? Will Smith get butchered by the wife in front of the whole world to see. And I felt bad for him because you could see him dying a little. You watched it. You could see him dying, trying to smile, but you know those smile. You see those times when you're young and your mom will slap you and akwambia usijaribu kulia, and so you like
I just laughed at him.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the first time. Those things usually aren't the first time.
No. My point is,
It was exposed.
I saw how he was dying, and the wife kept saying that there was an entanglement. Yeah. And you'd see what we'll like say, hey, you calling it an entanglement? An entanglement, is that what we're calling it? So basically what happened was, for those of you who didn't watch it, is that Jada, the wife of Will Smith, of is it over 20 years, was normally has a show. I think it's called the Red Table, where a talk show where she invites different people to come and they discuss different issues. And so August Alsina, which is
mostly a lot of nonsense.
So there's a hip hop guy. Ladies seem to really like him, and so he's a young guy. He recently released a new album, and in a promotional interview, he mentioned that he was in a relationship with Will Smith's wife, Jada Pinkett Smith. And for context, Jada was a former girlfriend.
Pinkett.
Yes, Jada was the former girlfriend, I think, to the OG Tupac Shakur.
If Tupac was here right now, he will ride with you. Nah.
Okay, humor. Yeah. So on this particular episode now, August says that he was in a relationship with Jada, and then now Jada, in an interview now on the round table with Will Smith, she mentions how she was not in a relationship with August. It was an entanglement, but now the context of it was they had agreed to have an open.
Who is August?
August Alsina. Yes, the rapper. He's a rapper. He's a hip hop guy. Let's call him a hip hop, because R&B is inclusive in hip hop. So they had an open marriage with Will Smith, right? So, and to make it even more weirder,
what's an open marriage?
Let me finish. Yeah. So what happened was, they agreed from the interview. Jada says that from the onset, they agreed that they're not going to. There was a moment when they were in a very, very bad place, and I think they decided, they were even splitting up, right? But then they decided not to split up, and in that moment is when he decided to, when she decided to get involved with August. Now, the weirdest bit is August Alsina was best friend with their firstborn son. What's the name of this boy? Jaden. They are very, very good. Imagine, Jaden is very... your best friend is your mom's boy toy. And to answer your question, an open marriage is where you decide, yes, we are living together, but we can see other people. And a number of people, like Monique from Monique the comedian, she's in an open relationship. A number of celebrities have been having open marriages. And so in this interview, I could see Will Smith dying a little bit a little bit more inside Manzi, and I felt so bad for him.
So I think his embarrassment was more with it becoming public and him being dragged to sanitize the whole thing.
No.
Not that it was not the issue with his wife and August having that relationship. I think his embarrassment or his issue was it being made public.
But people have always known that Will and the wife have an open marriage.
It's okay if it was known, but I think for the details to be exposed, that wasn't something nice for Will. Because I also think Will has his own
indiscretions.
He also has his own side chicks and indiscretions. But maybe I will say that he keeps his side chicks in line, and Jada couldn't keep his side chicks in line, and now he had to come and clean up Jada's mess just because she couldn't control her side dudes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what happened. If it's known it was an open thing, we can't assume it's only Jada who was having a side whatever.
Some people are thinking that the society is willing to forgive Jada, and I think they have in a big way.
No.
No, for real. If Will Smith was the one in that position, who he's trying to call a relationship that he's having outside marriage an entanglement, people would eat him up. You trash.
No, but from the reactions I got to see online, people started calling out Jada. Because now, when she used the word entanglement, people now came to the realization that people just use sometimes big words that feel philosophical, or they're blurry words to mask what actually happening. So if this thing was allowed by both parties and there was an actual relationship, why are you calling it an entanglement? What is an entanglement? You've introduced an entirely new word to describe something that has a word already for it, so that it seems watered down. If you say entanglement and not affair, it doesn't seem bad now.
But now you see, my point is this:
same thing as calling.
If you look at
tax evasion, tax avoidance.
No. There is a difference between tax evasion and tax
there
avoidance.
Is,
but anyway, that's a different discussion. All I'm saying is, if you look at someone like the guy who plays golf, what is his name? Tiger Woods.
Yeah.
The blowback that happened when he was caught in the indiscretion that he was in, his career got injured, sponsors pulled out.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
You guys are the worst.
This doesn't fit.
Okay. You guys are the worst. Anyway.
You had a strong pull-out game.
Clean your mind. Anyway,
oh my God.
When you look at the blowback where sponsors completely withdrew their...
No, there's nothing I can't look at without
sponsors no longer supported him. Let me put it that way because your minds are in the gutter. You see, and when you look at the case of Jada, she has been elevated. People who didn't even know her now know her. Because I'm sure there are very many people, especially in Kenya or outside the US, who didn't necessarily know who she was. Let me finish my point. So that you see, explain how the society is kind of willing, forgive the indiscretions of a woman and completely villainize the indiscretions of a man.
I disagree with you. Why are you assuming that she's been elevated? Because in my opinion and from what I've seen, people have said that she's full of it. Because after she called it an entanglement, even people could see that she was trying to cover up. To many people, she became a villain. Because it's accepted that they both had an open relationship. The issue was that she was trying to cover up her relationship with August as an entanglement and not what it was actually.
But
what
I think
it was.
I think Will Smith in that same talk also after that followed up with a relationship, and she agreed a relationship. But I just wanted to that whole thing where she was saying an entanglement. I think there's a name for it: mitigating speech. When you're trying to when you're trying to communicate something using less. What's the word? Yeah, using less severe words.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the whole fuss came from. Because she actually cheated. Okay, whatever.
Because they
Whatever the
had
situation
agreed
was.
to it.
But it was a relationship. But then her choosing to use it as to use the word an entanglement. Yeah, she was trying to sort of not trying to make it not seem that bad. But I think, in my opinion, where like the backlash came from, even from the public, and where people were seeing that maybe Jada is not as harshly judged as a man normally is especially even with that age difference.
Yeah.
Like, she is almost 20 years older than
I get
August.
You. I get you.
Because if it were Will Smith going out with with a 20-year-old, that's terrible. You see, and there was this situation with Drake, I don't know, texting an 18-year-old.
Yeah, 19.
And people were all up against Drake and everything. So
I'd say women mostly.
Well, yes.
And I have a theory for that.
My point is, when you look at what I like how Tito has brought up the age difference thing. Right now, there's a very big discussion going on these Jeffrey Epstein and the minors that they were engaged in indiscretions with. I'm going to use mitigating speech. So when you look at the kind of of course, it's abhorrent. It's completely wrong. But when you look at the kind of negative coverage that is getting, you can't help but compare these two. And Jada, that is not where the discussion is, the age difference. But obviously, I've always believed that as long as both of you can be able to vote, you are of legal age. Age is not just a number. First of all, I want to make it very clear, I am not supporting marriage. In my opinion, should be between a man and a woman, and they should be committed to one another. They should have commitment to each other. That's just what I believe. But now, in this particular issue, I'm just curious. How comes Kina Arnold Schwarzenegger, when men are caught with the hands, when stop saying the N-word, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm an Niger. Schwarzenegger. When someone like Arnold Schwarzenegger
Back to the chopper.
are caught with their hands in the cookie jar, Kevin Hart, and all these, people in the public, men in the public space, when they are caught, the blowback is much more severe as compared to women being caught in the cookie jar. And the discussion is normally, no, the problem must have been the man. If you see your wife going out to go, so you look for other people, you're not giving her enough attention, you're not giving her enough to do this and the other. But for the man, you're just being trash. You're just being a man, and men are dogs. That's where the that's normally how the discussion goes. And to be quite honest, I find that to be very, very hypocritical.
It is hypocritical, and it's not only beyond the gender thing. There's these situations where we've had in the US, a teacher have sex with a student. So the teacher is female of legal age, and the student is underage, and it's not even persecuted. The society almost doesn't see it as a big deal.
Massive.
And there have been 3 cases in the US right now. Another one is even locally. When you have 2 underage people having sex, why is it that it's the burden is placed on the boy? Even if both of them were underage. Even in a situation where maybe you might have a 19-year-old girl who is just over 18 having sex with a 17-year-old boy. And it's in the sieve. Maybe they have kids, and it's in the sieve the boy who was in the wrong. Why not the girl? Furthermore, we've decided that apparently when you reach 18, you magically become mature.
I think it usually stems down to the power dynamic. And more often than not, the men usually have more power in most of these relationships. And I don't know, it's hard for a man to have sex if they are not willing. That's what I can say.
That's
Yeah. So in terms
it's
of
easier for
gender,
women to have
no,
sex.
in terms of August and Jada, I don't.
They're just for hypocrisy.
No, I don't think it's if August didn't want to get in that affair with Nani. August? Is it August and Jada? I don't think he would have done it. There's usually a different kind of power dynamic between men and women. I don't know how I can explain it.
That whole Jada thing, I think it was more of Jada denying the relationship and calling it something else.
And then August saying that it's a relationship, because August was very clear that even if he died today, he has experienced love through the situation that he was in with Jada. But now, Kevin,
Jada denies it,
Jada
calling it an entanglement.
Yes.
But we have the background story.
Yeah.
They had agreed on an open marriage. Will Smith August asked Will Smith about it.
That's what, according
And
to
Will
August.
Smith gave him permission, according to August.
Yeah.
But I haven't seen any denial from Will Smith about that.
Will Smith.
He only had, I don't know what the issue even with Will Smith.
I think he said he knew about it.
Yeah.
So now listen.
So-
and the fact that he did not fight it kind of shows.
Yeah.
consent.
So,
But-
why is it? So, are you saying that the issue here is the way society is treating?
Yes.
It's
And to answer your question,
wrong for women,
what Kelvin
for
is
men.
saying, is that the power dynamic. I think what you're doing, Kevin, is looking at power, the power issue from a physical point of view, and I agree. The physical power in itself is an important dynamic when it comes to sexuality and consent. But I want to submit that there is also power manipulation that comes. Someone is of more influence, like in this case of Jada and August. Definitely, Jada is a much bigger powerhouse than August is or will ever be, probably, right? And from a point of view of age, from the point of view of money and influence and celebrity power that she wields. And it's something that we also see in our society where your boss might be a lady and she's above you in terms of she outranks you, and your life depends, kind of, quote unquote, in that organization. So if she was to kind of extort sexual favors from you, so now the question becomes, how isn't that also a power dynamic that is being used, that is not necessarily physical, but that can, because my point is, let us not underestimate the power of manipulation. Manipulation is something very, very powerful that we might tend to ignore. And I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and I understand what you're trying to say, but my view is, in most situations, especially in modern society, is no one really cares if it's a lady boss, maybe approaching like one of the subordinate male employees. Most people in the world will be like, say, go for it.
And that's the problem.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. It's
And
an issue.
It's because most of the time, most times, dudes won't do it or do anything with the lady if they don't want to. But many times, when it comes to a dynamic where it's a male and a female employee, it's usually, I don't know, there's a certain power dynamic. It's usually different. The guy might be trying to, I don't know how I can explain it, but it's usually different when it's reverse.
Well, from a physical,
Not even
I'm
physical.
saying from a physical,
Even the influence in itself in the company and all that. There's no way I don't know if the boss employee who's a female will go around saying that she refused my sexual advances. He refused my sexual advances. So there's no way I'm giving him a promotion or anything. But I think the male employee can do something due to the guy not giving, the lady not giving him like the advances or reciprocating the advances. I don't know.
Well, I don't necessarily.
The
agree with
dynamic
you.
is usually a lot. most of the time I find the dynamic is usually a lot different.
And see-
When the guy,
You're being sexist, Kevin.
no, I'm not saying.
You're being reverse sexist here. We are favoring the women.
No, I'm trying
in this
to be
discussion.
devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Most of the time, it's like the Epstein one, the one you are saying. I watched the documentary on Netflix, and you found that most of these ladies usually felt that they'd been pushed to like a corner. There's no way they could have come out of it. They were trying to tell police officers, and nothing was being done. It's like they felt that moment where, let's say, Epstein was telling them, massage me, like
Blah,
all
blah,
this,
blah.
all this stuff. It was, they felt, I'm trapped here, I can't leave. And most often than not, usually find it's very hard to find a guy in that position with a woman.
But to be honest with you, I have a friend who has found himself in that position where the manager, who definitely will do the thing, what is it called, the annual review that will determine your promotion, is asking for sexual favors. This is someone who's married and with kids. You're fresh out of college. You're trying to make progress in the career ladder, and the guy.
And is that a fear of life or fear of
It's
losing your job?
Fear of losing your job.
Yeah, in most cases for women, it's usually a fear of life.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you put that.
So,
And actually, in the corporate ladder, actually, to agree with you,
in that
it's
case-
also
in that
an
case-
issue of fearing for your job.
But
also,
I don't think.
like in the case of Epstein and this guy from Weinstein. I don't know what's all with these things, but what happened was, women, if you want to get a role in a movie, even Lupita Nyong'o was a victim of Weinstein, where if you want to get this role in Hollywood, you have to it's movies are sexually transmitted, right? And it's the same thing also in Bollywood. A friend of mine, an Indian, he was telling me, in Bollywood, majority of these women, you find that they're not even that very good actresses. But for you to progress, there has to be a price to pay.
Yeah, and I think that's, in that case, I'd say it's on the lady. In that case, if you're given an option, you either sleep with me or you don't get the job. If someone has, the people who have good morals, like you said, Lupita Nyong'o, what did she say?
She said she walked away.
She walked away.
Allegedly.
So, yes.
You
You can't say allegedly to that.
Okay, fine. I'm sorry. From what she said,
Yeah,
she
from
walked
what
away.
she said,
Yeah.
she walked away. Yeah, she walked away. So, if you see, she had her moral, she knew her value and all that, and she said no. There are those who will say yes and sleep all the way to the top, and they'll never complain. And there are those who will
Sleep.
and then complain.
There's a comedian who was saying, who was this?
Dave Chappelle.
Yeah, he was saying, Akuna mtoto hapo. What was he saying about it?
No, I don't know if it's the same one, but I remember him saying, he was talking about how he walked away from the $50 million Comedy Central deal to do Chappelle show season, I think 3. And then when he hears a lady say, when
I had no option.
yeah, when it was when Louis C.K. revealed himself to me, he shattered my dreams. And then he said, and then I believe you didn't have a dream to begin with. If someone revealing themselves to you is what shattered your dreams, you didn't have a dream to begin with.
So his point was, you can walk away.
You can walk away.
And
You can
pick
walk
yourself
away, yeah.
up. So the people who normally do it and say, I didn't have an option,
Yeah.
really, you always have an option. It's just the consequences that maybe you're a bit uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
And I think we shouldn't simplify it just as that, because like if you're looking at you're in employment, say a girl and your boss does something like that, even a dude, and you're put in that compromising situation, and maybe like here in Kenya, you can be helped a lot, and maybe you have to put food on the table. It's a precarious situation for you. So are we blaming? Are we blaming? Are we putting the burden on the victim instead of punishing the?
You don't understand. What we are saying is this: it happens, right? At least I'm saying is, don't say you didn't have an option. You always have an option. It's just the consequences of the options that you have. Maybe you're not very, very comfortable with. For example, now, if your boss is demanding this kind of thing, you have the option of saying, no, I won't do it. But maybe you're not very comfortable with the consequences of losing your job.
But does that not place the burden on the victim and not the perpetrator?
Both of them have, of course, I would
burden
say,
should be on the perpetrator.
But there is no argument about that. But we are saying, even you, the victim, it's faulty to claim that you didn't have an option. It's life is unfair. Life obviously is very, very unfair. I'm just saying that it's wrong to claim that you did not have an option.
In light of marriage and the story of Will Smith and Jada, what's the role of the man? What's the role of the woman? And what's a marriage?
And actually, that's what I also wanted to kind of
we diverted.
Yeah, we deviated a bit.
But as we are finishing that section up, I was saying in most instances, men usually find themselves on the latter side of that dynamic of most of the time I can say no and walk away.
Yeah. But for women, it's not so much.
And they usually understand. I chose to have sex with my boss to get ahead of with my career, and I'm fine with it. You'll never find a guy complaining about I slept my way all the way to the top, even if I was taken advantage of. Yeah? They rarely do it because most of they know what I'm giving this to get something else. It's a give and take. For women, there are instances where there's that fear of my life,
or where the option of choosing is taken away from you. And by all means, I agree that is. So now brings me to the next point. And the point is marriage. So Tito, this goes to you. What is your opinion on open marriages in light of this particular issue? What happens so that people go with the open marriage option?
I think you first of all know my stand on that. That's I picked on me.
What is your opinion?
But I don't get it, by the way, to be honest.
And why do you think people go for it?
I think there's some level of commitment that is avoided, because marriage, as we traditionally understand it, is that total exclusivity to one person and commitment to one person, that you are there for them. Why are you reacting like that?
Not me, by the way, for the record, it's not me like that.
Yes, there's someone in the crowd here who's making funny reactions.
You might be thinking I'm cringing on you saying commitment. No, I have no problem with commitment.
Are you talking to a specific person?
No. I'm still very single. Anyway, continue.
Anyway, I was saying. Okay, let me not say that I fully understand why they choose to go that way. I don't know, because I wouldn't, in my wildest imaginations, think of going down that route. But I do think that that particular aspect of commitment is huge. And based on the way you defined it, it allows for someone to continue seeing other people. It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't see why you would choose to sort of commit yourself to one. It's like you're committing yourself halfway through, and there's no way you will have something fulfilling by telling someone, "Hey, let's do this together. Let's raise children," but I may not be there for you all through.
I actually do agree with you on that regard, because I think one of the things that make marriages fully work, people who get married for 20, 50 years, is going in with the mindset that this is it. There is no outlet. We just need to work our issues out within this infrastructure that has been provided, that is the marriage institution. And I feel like in many ways, one of the reasons why people would go for open marriages is I would say the lack or the disinterest in committing yourself. You want to get into something halfway, and always having an option B. When you get into marriage, you need to get into it very, very sure. And I like how our pastor Ken, when he's officiating the marriages, he always says that marriage is not an institution to be gotten into lightly, because this is something that is completely exclusive. And I don't know, I want to say from a natural point of view, it kind of goes against the very nature of who a man is, where you commit yourself to one person, to having a sexual interaction with one person. That is against the quote-unquote natural instincts of a man. But no, naturally, from a scientific point of view, men are promiscuous animals. There is data to show that. But my point is,
men can have sex with multiple women without having a emotional connection.
Yes,
but I don't know if it's the same with women.
So my point is, once you've committed to this institution, you need to be very, very sure about what you're getting yourself into, and fully committing to going all the way.
It breaks because it doesn't live to certain standards. So, and also, how do you enter in an open relationship? The way you've said it, when you start doing something half-heartedly, then it's bound to fail. So you either, for me, if you can't do it in a monogamous way, just become single. And you can have all those relationships you want.
No.
If that's what you believe. Why not? No. Let me say. Yeah.
What again you are fighting for, what you are agitating for, is a promiscuous life. Is a life of going around
and having sex with people.
And to be very honest with you, I'm not sure.
Why have a monogamous marriage if you know you won't be able to do it? Then don't do it. And if you don't do it,
on that,
are you telling me then
let's
not
not agree? Let's
you can't propose that this is wrong, and then when I don't do it, say it's also wrong. You can't tell people that. So you tell people, don't choose to have a monogamous relationship if you know you're not going to be monogamous.
Mm-hmm.
Then people choose not to be monogamous, and then you tell them you can't be not monogamous.
No,
it's true.
That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is, if you realize that you're not going to be able to commit, leave it.
Yes, and what does that mean?
That's it.
What does that?
Yeah.
So what does that mean?
So my point is, with regards,
I disagree with that. Sex is a reproduction. Is an activity for reproduction. Animals do it all the time. We have those urges all the time.
But that does not mean we should give in to those urges. Piano mic.
But it doesn't also mean that usually we naturally feel those urges. Yeah? No, I'm not saying acting on them, but we have that urge.
Yes.
Does it mean, why don't we then have an urge for marriage?
You see now, what happens is, what informs that
people,
is...
There are some people who don't want
the set of morals. Everyone has a set of morals that they live by.
So if you say everyone has a set of morals, so if
my point
disagreeing with yours, doesn't mean that
and that's what I'm saying. My point of view would be, maybe sex should be within. A child is crying. You see, you're hurting the children with your stupidity. Listen, all I'm saying is,
they're in a dysfunctional marriage.
Sex
she will be crying.
Should be within
willing to have children in the
bounds of marriage.
Okay, first of all, I think we are trying to arrive at one universal across very many, because whatever Moretti here is referring to, it's the Christian idea of marriage. It's specifically the Christian idea of marriage. And I don't think it would make sense to expect Christian marriages from non-Christians. It wouldn't make sense. So maybe we can all agree that maybe what we are sort of benchmarking against is the Christian idea of marriage. So the whole idea of marriage in the Bible, first of all, I think it's tied to the whole narrative that the Bible is about. Because the Bible is about this narrative of a people that fall away from God, and through that whole storyline, God is restoring all the humanity and everything that came with the fall. Now, marriage was also affected by the fall. So I don't think we can pick out an aspect of marriage and just discuss on it alone, because it falls within this whole Christian narrative that has a story to it. Now, in the beginning, God intended marriage to be between a man and a wife. And this is what Christ alludes to when he says, because of your hardness of heart, Moses allowed you to divorce your wives and everything. So the aspect of like the polygamous marriages in the Old Testament, what I've seen, the explanations I've seen refer to like the cultures at those times where women needed like some sort of attachment to a man for economic reasons, even for social reasons, and then the mortality rates for men were very high because of the constant wars, and we know it's men who go to war. So the ratio of men to women was always disproportionate. So I think that was sort of an inevitable dynamic. But that's not the true intention of God for marriage. Remember, all this is in a setup where it's a fallen world that God is redeeming. And now when Christ comes and institutes that back, that idea of a man and a woman together raising up a family, and in the New Testament is actually has very strong imagery of a monogamous marriage, because it paints a picture of Christ and the church sort of being the husband and the wife. So I think those are my views on that. I think
maybe on me, he's talked about the Christian side of it. The reason I was making a face when he said that was the traditional way of marriage is because even in Africa, we were polygamous. That's why I was saying traditional is relative.
Oh, yeah.
So it depends on whose tradition. So I was reading a book called Sex at Dawn. It's about human sexuality throughout the different times and ages, and they're showing most cultures that usually don't put such a high value on sex. There's usually a better relationship between men and women. Most of the time today, like in most marriages we have today per se, it's more of we loved each other, and I don't know how I can define that love, because most of the time I find is we're probably sexually attracted to each other. And it might be the reason, I'm not saying it's the reason all the time, but it might be the reason why people get married. And then if the basis for your marriage is on how we are sexually compatible, you find that along the way that becomes stale. And then we realize there are things about each other we don't like. But traditional marriage never used to have a really high value on sex. Even I remember when we were studying in, I don't know if it was primary school or high school, it was even in African culture, when let's say your friend came over, you could give your wife to him to sleep with her.
There's some African cultures.
Like sex, even in Maasai, you remember you're told if your age mate, the guy who you were initiated at the same time, came to your place and you were not around, he could just spear the ground with his spear at the door and then go in and sleep with your wife if the wife allows. If you came home and find that that's happening, You just go and do something else. In most traditional cultures, sex was not a big thing. These days, it's the thing. It's like he cheated on you. We're breaking up. There's so many other things a guy can do in a marriage and never that never leads to breaking up. But if it's just infidelity, it's usually the big thing. It's unforgivable. I can't come back to that. So there's a certain value people have put on, I think, sex that kinda destroys marriages. Another thing also on, like Bonnie was saying, sleeping around. It's usually, statistics are showing people who usually have one life partner throughout their life usually last longer in marriages. If your wife was the first person you like had sex with, usually have a longer marriage. Then when maybe you are like very promiscuous before you got married, it usually leads to problem down the line. It's just statistically speaking. And usually a husband and wife family, even if I'm actually not looking at it from a Christian perspective, but one husband and wife family usually produce better adjusted kids. Most of the time, if maybe a woman who's having kids from different people, she's the one who's raising the kids. Statistically speaking, I'm not saying it can't work out well, but statistically speaking, the kids usually don't like grow up well. Yeah.
So actually, when you look at Jada's kids, those Jada and Will Smith's kids, those kids, man, they are local. They are completely like you realize there's need for that structure, and it's what Kevin is saying. There's a book I saw someone. It's called a boy who's raised as a dog. I don't know, something like it's a psychology book. I think the boy who was raised as a dog. It's a very good book. And there is a story in the book of one child who saw the mom get killed. A man came in, slashed the mom with a knife, and the child also akakatwa na kisu on the neck. Fortunately, the child didn't die. So when the child woke up hours maybe later, and there was some milk on the kitchen bench, went and drank the milk like poured out from the neck. So the person like slit completely, and went also tried giving the mom some milk. He was a 4-year-old baby child. Tried giving the mom some milk, and it was such an ugly scene. The person who came, the mom is dead, the child doesn't know. There was so much blood everywhere and milk. So the aunt or something comes and knocks, and that's how they were discovered. But from that time, and the child grew up, so the mom died, and the child grew up with a very, very bad trauma for milk. Like till this day, the child cannot stand milk. The adult cannot stand milk and cannot stand silverware, because the mind kind of goes back to that scenario. So that trauma. And so to agree with you, I think it's very, very important that even as parents, you seek to give a bit of structure. There's a meme today I was seeing, the person was saying, you saying that your parents have been married for 40 years, blah, blah, blah. Have you ever seen them holding hands? Have you ever seen them kissing? Oh, Nigerians, you see your marriages last for 40, 50 years. Have you ever seen your parents holding hands, kissing, or in each other's laps? But then I'm thinking, the most important thing is the kind of structure, the kind of consistency that you're giving your children as they grow up. We might demonize our parents for not being overly emotional with each other, but I feel like how they did it kind of helped us be a bit more rounded, to be a bit more psychologically stable, because of that stability we get from the word go.
I think what I'm understanding is that the parents they model to the child what a stable marriage is supposed to be. So I think there's another thing that came up. We were discussing with Kevin about having children. So
not with me. Thank you for that clarification.
So there was this discussion of women who don't want children. So the question is, should the man be okay with the woman not wanting children?
Maybe a quick one on that before I say something I had on my mind. I think one of the reasons people get married is children.
Procreation.
Yeah, procreation and a continuation of, your own lineage and everything and company. And also there's, interestingly, from what I've learned from married people, there's a very strong sense of responsibility and meaning, a sense of meaning that comes from bringing up children. So I think that those are part of the reasons people have children. And I think maybe those are discussions people need to have before they get married.
That's what I was going to say, that
yeah.
It's very, very important for that communication to be very clear, so that even because I had a boss who decided, they are almost in their 40s and they've decided not to have children. They are, sorry? Yeah, the man and the man, they've decided not to have children. Sorry? The man and the woman, they've decided, goodness. The woman, my boss is a woman. So they've decided not to have children and they're touring the world together, enjoying life. So, yes, it's very important that you have procreation, but also companionship is part of marriage. But that communication needs to be had before you get in.
But so something else I had on my mind is on this whole discussion of marriage and family. Family is not separate, is not unaffected by the political scenes in societies and everything. And for us, especially in African context and everything, I think, first of all, and I think I sort of picked this up from what you were saying, have you ever seen your parents being affectionate and everything and all that? I think the way our parents grew up, remember, like, they themselves grew up in a setting that was just coming from a colonial setup that had never had any regard for family. And you don't expect families to thrive under such conditions. And you see the thing with even cultures, these things are passed down. These things are passed down to people. The way you bring up your children, you will most probably, unless you're intentional about it, raise them the way you were raised.
What do you mean? They were coming from a colonial period that did not support families, because I would be of the opinion that they were coming from a period of colonialism, a British white man colonialism period that was Christian, quote unquote, based, where families were very, very important. You can the book by Ngugi Thiong'o, The River Between, Joshua, and like when you look at that book, you realize that there is a lot of emphasis on family and marriage. And one of, I think one of,
but to be clear, that's fictional.
But books reflect the realities of the society. We use, I would say, culture is normally the canvas on which books are written on. Yeah, because you depend on the current culture or the culture that you are writing on to be able to tell your story. So, of course, that book would be reflective of the situation that was happening during that period. But that's my point is, what do you mean by we're coming from a period of where family was not valued? Because I would be of a contrary opinion.
But have you ever considered that your parents were traumatized? by the war.
Exactly. Like
Freedom fighting.
that's some of what I was.
Let me give you a story of my mom, what she told me. So, during their time, there was a lot of child labor. And it was forced on them in terms of, this is our story. During their time, so my grandfather was one of the guys. He was a young man, but they were involved in that, the guerrilla warfare and stuff. And my grandmother also used to, they used to take food to the fighters and all. So they had seen a lot of death, and a lot of men died, a lot of young able men. So they needed a lot of labor from the remaining population, that is women, the few men who had been left, the old men and children. And then growing up in such a setting where death is commonplace, it affects you as a child. The same we've described that boy. So we tend to see our parents as just our parents, and we don't tend to see them beyond. Like your dad was once in your position. He was not always your dad. He was at one time himself. He had his own dreams. He had his own traumas. But for our parents, they had that thing. And she was telling me that they didn't have time to think about raising kids well and family.
Exactly.
They were spent most of their time. They needed to provide food for the family, so tailing in the fields. And then their parents were very keen for them to go to school. So their parents also used to work a lot so that they can take them to school. They never saw each other a lot. Our parents did not experience that emotional attachment that you talk of. So they never learned it from them.
What I was saying is, you see, first of all, even having this conversation of how we can raise better families and everything, it's a privilege we have right now. As you were saying, our fathers and our grandfathers, they never had time for that. You needed to provide, you needed to think about food, and you had no time to think about being a better father and everything. Now, still coming to that, one very crucial aspect to families and the raising of healthy families is fatherhood. And Moretti, you will have to agree with all of us that
or else
let's not come to that, but that manhood in Africa, in our context, manhood was seriously affected by colonization and everything. Because speaking of it generationally, like our fathers, they were not fathered.
I kind of agree with Moretti, and it's in terms of the way you're saying our parents didn't show affection. It's because for them that was not a major part of marriage. Marriage had other things that it entailed, like you said,
which was provision.
Like you said, there was that providing food, taking care of the family, teaching certain values. It was them showing affection was a very small part of what entailed marriage. It didn't mean they didn't love each other. So for them, the part where you're saying that fatherhood and all that was affected, I tend to disagree, because I think it was affected more when we started getting more westernized. Back then, because as I remember, the always stages which you went through. You are a child you are a child to a certain age, then you are taken to the men, and it was more communal as well. It's not only your father who was fathering you, your grandfather was fathering you, the men in your clan were fathering you. You're taken, taught about the values of the clan, this is what we believe in, this is who we pray to, all that, and there was a system that was set in. The part of OSG, we love you and all that wasn't, but it was more let's do and not tell.
But even that setup that was there, it was significantly disrupted by colonization. We'll have to agree on that. Because even after the state of emergency, the majority of the men, they were up fighting guerrilla warfares and everything. Well, as you were saying, the women were up providing food. My own grandmother used to tell us stories of how she used to smuggle food to the Mau Mau in
but that's also very regionally specific, because not all regions are fighting. That's not all regions are fighting. So how do you explain? It was more.
No. That's a misconception, and it usually revolves around that the Mau Mau. In fact, the Mau Mau are not fighting for the freedom of Kenya. The Mau Mau are fighting for the freedom of their lands within their community. Yes. Other communities like the Nandi, they're also fighting. Arab Samoe. You see, you're assuming that it's only the Mau Mau. It's not only the Mau. And
Yes,
then,
but
secondly,
what about those societies
about
where
this.
Kabingu's point is, what about those societies where we see them are kind of being complacent or just nonchalant, do not caring about the presence of the white man and kind of agreeing with the white man, and this toxic, quote unquote toxic male fatherhoodness traits still existed in those places where they were not necessarily fighting.
I think you should. What's your definition of those toxic traits?
No. We are describing. We are coming from a point of how African.
If my
families,
dad doesn't tell me she loves me, why are you assuming that
you
she
see,
doesn't love me?
No. You see, Kevin, Boniface. What I'll say is this: when you look at it from the point of view of, and actually, it's a very, very important point. When you look at it from the point of view of, there are societies that did not fight the white man. Yeah. There are societies that agreed with the white man.
Yeah.
And like in Anandi, you find that the people who are fighting, it was not as communally, I would say, censored as with the Mau Mau, because with the Mau Mau, everybody was involved. In one form or the other, it came and make you take oaths. But in those other places, you find maybe it was just the warriors who were from the community and helped by the community fight. But no, not everybody was fighting. So let me finish so that these, yes, all these societies where they didn't fight, right? How comes the template is kind of the same? Doesn't it then point to the fact that maybe it was not an issue of our parents being traumatized, but an issue of maybe priorities being different than they were right now, one. And secondly, as I was saying, we were coming from a societies basically that were deeply patriarchal, that necessitated the women to play second fiddle. Because you can't, not all societies were oppressed. Not all societies were fighting.
Can I ask you something? Because I'm not sure what you're arguing for. So are you...
Ouch.
No, for real, because you're shifting between patriarchy and women oppression and marriage and children. So I'm not sure, what does this point to? Are you... Because initially when we were talking about the trauma and stuff, it was in respect to how our parents raised us. Yes.
No, it was from what I understood, it was with respect to the fact that, and that's what you quoted, our parents not being necessarily the most affectionate, and then I had given the point that
to children or
to themselves, with each other.
Oh, with each other.
Yes, with each other. That is where all this is developing from. They were not very, very affectionate with each other, and Tito had opined that it could have been because of they were so traumatized to love each other, and I deeply disagreed with that. And Kabingu brought in the point that it could be as a result of the priorities being a bit different from they are right now, and that's what I'm saying. On top of that, I also do tend to think that it was a society that was deeply patriarchal, that did not see women as equals in the marriage, saw women as property. That was throughout the African society, and if a woman would be looked at in the same level with a cow,
this whole thing about African women not being respected in the traditional societies, how true are you? You see, you're talking about
let me just
cows,
throw in a spanner,
but you're saying about dowry. Dowry was never about paying for a woman.
Boniface.
So when you say a woman is being equated to a cow, what do you mean? Or property? And why are you assuming? Oh, well, let me finish. Why are you assuming that they did not love their women just because they don't love them the way that you would love a woman now? Secondly, also know that you are exposed to Western culture. They were not. If you aren't, you'll probably be the same. So they can also claim ignorance. And you cannot blame that on them.
I am not saying women are cows.
No. But you see, the point I'm raising is you're accusing those guys of various things.
I am not saying women are cows. I'm not saying
Say they are
that.
treated well.
I was just saying the society back then, how they viewed women. They viewed them as property. When you're counting your property, this is something I'll send links.
They
if you
counted
want
children.
They counted even the number of wives.
Actually, you're not supposed to. Yeah, you're not supposed to count children.
There are societies that didn't count children, others did. Luvinzu. Africa was not one. But all I'm saying is...
Then why are you blanket
No.
generalization of all others?
The consistent model that existed was women were viewed... The number of women that you married...
Can I propose something?
As your property. And
Can I propose something? Can I propose something?
Let's pull it back. Let's pull it back to marriage.
Let me propose something.
I know
Let's
you propose.
not blame what we can't control.
Okay.
And
Yes.
and work on what we can control.
So this whole discussion was about marriage and family and children, and I think the contentious thing has been how we were raised and how our parents were raised, and I hold my guard that the post-war period, the post-war parents, like, they did not raise us like the way our parents were raised and how in turn they raised us. It all goes back to back then.
Did your parents go to war?
My grandmothers did.
That doesn't mean that.
If you are raised by parents who go to war, they have no right to be there.
Actually, for me, I have like I said, my way of thinking about it is different. It's just that to them, it's regardless of how they grew up. I think the way they raised us, it's kind of better because they showed us there are many things that make a marriage that are not only sex and affection and all that. Marriage has a lot more that goes into it. If you model ourselves on what they showed us, you'll see taking care of kids and all that, because their society valued that. Kids, that relationship between even the parents and the kids, which I might say in modern marriages you're also losing, because you're at work all day, you rarely see your kids, other people have your kids more than you don't get to impact your values on them. So for them, yes, I can say it was more of they showed us there's a lot that goes into marriage.
When you look at the current society, love kind of becomes an emotion. Love kind of and especially when you look at a very wild review, you realize that love becomes that feeling, and if that feeling goes, then our marriage is not working. We are not compatible. But in my opinion, is that I always say that love is a verb. It's not a noun. Love is an action. Love are things that you are doing, that you are intentionally doing, that you might not want to do these things, but you do them nonetheless to make marriage work. And I think that is what our parents, that's how different we are, the marriage of our parents' time and right now. Because my father will come home and do what needs to be done to make this work. He will sacrifice his salary, he will sacrifice whatever needs to be sacrificed, because he, in what I've said, doing things exactly. So I'm saying, it's not a feeling; it's the things that you're intentionally doing, repeatedly with the same person, to make the marriage work. And I think that's something that is not very, very big in the 21st century average marriage.
Can we say that it seems like, let's say, this generation and our parents, they also still had flaws? Because ours right now feels like it's more sex and maybe beyond what you're saying about love. For them, they had that responsibility, respect. There's that actionable love. Maybe it lacks. Maybe that's what we need to learn.
Yeah, and I think that's a message you need to send.
But I think if we are discussing about this right now, it's a good thing.
Yes. And
I don't think our parents had that chance.
yeah, and
Even your dad will be like,
Yeah, that's what I was alluding to.
high school, my dad used to come with a gazette and nyama and nothing. And he would come during visiting days. Visiting days ni mom. Na sis mama kuja na cooking na nini
na manyama.
Mbuyu atakaa bila time hakuna visiting days.
Nakuja na gazeti na
pesa. Gazeti, yes, kuna gazeti
na pesa.
Na pesa. Sasa angenileta kanyamcho. But mimi ingefurahi. Kapesa gazeti na nemuona.
I think so I think it's very, very important we're having this discussion and being very, very candid about the fact that there are things that even us as we get into marriage that we need to consider very, very deeply. And we are hoping that even you as our listener, you will be able to get value and consider maybe that we as a society might have a very loose and flimsy understanding of what marriage is and should be. And so it's very, very important that you think about those things and it's very, very key that you realize that even as you get into marriage, you're not getting into marriage with a saint. You are as broken and as boring and as all those things as unromantic as you might see your partner to be, and basically pointing us to the fact that you also are flawed and no one is an angel, and therefore marriage is all about really, in my opinion, two very imperfect people trying to make things work. Two very different people who grew up in very different environments. So before you get into marriage, it's important that you realize that you are not getting into an arrangement with an angel, and be very open-minded to the fact that the person will be broken. The person will be different, and that does not mean the marriage is not working. That just means that you need to put in work to make it work.
CG, at the end of this discussion, I think I've gotten more confused than because because if you're concluding that there's more to marriage, are you in a way supporting what Jada did? Because her, it's her and Will raising their kids and all that was more important.
No. So my conclusion, Kevin, is that what Jada and Smith did was not appreciate that this person might be broken. Because if you listen to the story, it's because they recognize this person is broken, so they decided to venture out. But they did not go in with the mentality that this person will have issues, and I need to be patient enough with this person, to be flexible enough to continuously and repeatedly go back to the same person.
The way you've defined marriage, you guys defined it in a Christian basis, right?
No.
Yeah, it's more of a Christian it's more of a Christian because if I look at alternative ways in which people we have polygamy, we have polyamory, we have all those other types of marriages out there, and they work for some people. So, that's why I'm saying when we say there are more important things, in a way you're kind of supporting also other alternative ways.
No, Kevin.
Because if we come together, we agree, sex is not the most important thing in our marriage. We want to come together, we work together well, we want to have kids, we might even love each other, regardless of who we have sex with. So how is that bad for their relationship?
You see, to conclude, Kevin, in every discussion, people will always work from a certain point of bias. That cannot be removed from a discussion. And I will have my own biases concerning this issue that is informed by very many factors. So now, marriages, even for people who are not necessarily Christians, last for very long when commitment is at the center of that institution. Whether it's Christian, whether it's not. Marriages at work is a work because of commitment, people deciding to choose each other every time. You realizing that this person is broken, and you choosing this person continuously. but because this is the person that you chose to live with. This is the person that you chose to do marriage with. And therefore, commitment is at the center of that equation.
A man and a woman.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so my final thoughts on this. First of all, I think marriage and family is an evolving institution. And obviously the way it was 50 or even 40 years ago is not the way it is right now. And even right now as we speak, it's still evolving. But I think this whole argument sort of refers back to a core worldview and a set of values. And I think referring back to that section we started with, that reference to Jada and Will, there's something that Jada said that stuck out for me, because how she was trying to justify the whole relationship was that it had been a long time since she felt good. So she was longing for a good feeling of some kind of happiness. And in that I saw individualism. And I think that's one thing that's sticking out very strongly even today, where selfishness and individualism, because that affects commitment. Because previously it used to be I'm committed and I'm utterly committed to you and to serving you, but these days is I'm committed to us but I come first. So I think we still need to question those underlying perspectives and notions. Those are my final thoughts.
Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We hope that we earned the value of your time, and we hope to hear from you next time. Thank you. Kwaheri.